Well, folks, here we are again on Friday morning, and of course, over this last week, we've been pretty much stuck with temperatures in the upper 20s to the mid 30s over most of the snowfield in Nebraska. The one thing to note is with all the heavy snow that we received, it's been amazing to see how much of that snow has disappeared over this last week, even with these temperatures constricted well into the 30s, and that's just proof that we are seeing some of the thawed out ground underneath melting that snow, and we're gradually getting it into the profile, and you couldn't ask for a better scenario in terms of getting that moisture in instead of seeing it run off. We don't expect to see any major warm-up over this next 7-day period, and there's several chances of precipitation, but overall, not much in the way of significant weather to impact at least the Central Plains. And we'll be looking out into around the 24th. Right now, the models are getting very aggressive with another monstrous storm system. So, as we go into next week, we'll see whether or not that verifies, but just as a heads up that there is some signs that something similar to what we just experienced over this last week may be in the store for at least the Central Plains, and actually maybe some of that might, in terms of the model, lift a little bit farther north and catch portions of northeast Nebraska that has missed out on most of these major precipitation events this winter. So let's see what's going on over this next 7-day period. And as we go to the upper air models, the one thing I'll draw your attention to is the cold front that is bringing the chillier air in today. We'll be also having the possibility of generating some fairly light snowfall as this system pushes farther south with the cold air that's been bottled up in Alaska and Canada. That means our temperatures today are going to be exceptionally cold compared to what we've been accustomed to the last couple of days. We'll be looking at highs probably in the mid-teens to upper teens across extreme northeastern Nebraska. And as you get towards southwestern Nebraska and western Nebraska, we may be looking at the mid to upper 20s. And then as we see this cold front push through and the main cold air moving to our east, we'll still remain in the cold sector, unfortunately, on Saturday. We'll be still looking at highs in the mid-teens across extreme northeastern Nebraska and the mid to upper 20s across western Nebraska as this ridge tries to push in or bring some warmer air into the central and southern Rockies. Doesn't look like much in the way of any significant moisture, maybe a few flurries as this cold air shifts to our east, but as we get into Sunday, we'll start to see some warming taking place in advance of the next trough that's trying to push through the central and southern Rockies. So we'll be looking at a rebound in temperature, and we could be into the mid to upper 20s across eastern and northeastern Nebraska. As we get to western Nebraska, where there's much less snowfall, particularly in the Panhandle, we could be looking at the mid to upper 30s. Now, as we get into Monday, we'll see another little tiny system trying to make its way through, might generate a little light precipitation, but overall, we're looking at maybe a tenth of an inch at the best across south central southeast Nebraska. Overall, we'll be looking at fairly stagnant temperatures with highs somewhere in the mid to upper 20s across the east. And as you get toward the south and southwest, we may be looking at highs that will be in the mid 30s. Now, as we get into Tuesday, we'll start to see some ridging taking place. Again, a little bit warmer air moving into our region. We'll be looking at upper 20s across the north to possibly the upper 30s across the south. And as we get into Wednesday, we start to see some energy moving into the south central United States, pushing moisture up into our region. There's possibility of some precipitation, but most will be right south of the Interstate 80. We're looking at highs in the upper 20s to the low 30s across the state. And as we get into Thursday, that system moves to our east and another one starts to build into the southwest. So again, this off and on precipitation regime looks to be in store. Highs in the mid 30s to mid to upper 40s across the west. 8 to 14 day indicates that cold pocket to our west in terms of precipitation, keeping the very majority of the precipitation well south of the state.